when you're afraid that you're going to say something that they don't want to hear. And so it's even more intense when that crowd is saying every word you say back at you, which hearing yourself in an echo chamber makes you really understand that you want to make sure that your words mean something. So it's then I finally got everyone's attention. I went forward and I carefully explained that we wanted a small change in the language, but with a serious ethical weight. It's not that we disagreed with our common humanity, obviously, but the history of oppression was being erased in this document. Let me tell you what it feels like to stand in front of a white man and explain privilege to him. It hurts. It makes you tired. Sometimes it makes you want to cry. Sometimes it's exhilarating. Every single time it's hard. Every single time I get angry that I have to do this, that it's my job, and it shouldn't be my job. Every single time I am proud of myself that I have been able to say these things because when I was younger, I wasn't able to, and sometimes just didn't want to. But it was hard, it was real, and it hurt. But people listened and they accepted our change. So it's an interesting narrative. It tells you about the process that some of these young people are going through, struggling with these issues of race. And I argue that this is the elephant in the room because many young people of color who show up at Occupy events, who are definitely in the minority, are struggling with these issues and they're going through these emotions, and their needs are not being addressed because the slogan 99%, we are the 99%, excludes all of the statistics that you heard throughout the day. So I'm not going to repeat those statistics, but the wealth gaps, the racial wealth gaps, the gaps in gender-based wealth, all of these gaps are ignored with the narrative that you're either part of the 99% or the 1%. And so that's the elephant in the room that the Occupy movement has thus far ignored. And I'm going to turn it to Professor Brown to talk more in depth about the other side.
Thank you all for dealing with us through our technical computer difficulties. So what you see behind you was kind of in tandem with what Professor Hansford was speaking. He's reading the direct quote from the South Asian woman. So if you, just to go back really quickly, the statement originally said, we are one people who are formally divided by these things. And I've highlighted formally to indicate that there is no formal, right? This is still going on in the present. And in the end, right, this young woman, the first bullet point speaks to that oppression and racism are still going on, and what the new declaration now reads, because she decided to speak up, right? So that Occupy Wall Street, in their formal declaration, says that they understand this reality of oppression through racism, sexism, and in some more nuanced ways, LGBTQ concerns. But yet, what have they done to actively address these things? Like Professor Hansford said earlier, we've talked a lot today about wealth inequality based on race. But what we haven't really talked a lot about is how do women fall into this equation, let alone women of color. And a lot of this, some of this was touched upon in the earlier panel on women and economic inequality. So here are some not so recent numbers for you from 2007, but the bullet points still stand true with the new data that came out with the 2010 census report. Right, so we know that poverty rates are higher for women than men. And part of this goes to the structure of women's paid work in the United States, as well as the relationship that women have to government assistance. And the earlier panel I attended with Paul and Chris were talking about how African Americans were excluded from government assistance programs such as GI Bill, FHA loans. Well, it's also Data Scotch Pools where it talks about how women were equally excluded, and that while pensions were seen as a man's work, so men were able